Just to reiterate Jill's comments, we are going to hold all questions until the end. So first come, first serve, and we will stay online as long as necessary to answer all questions this morning. So please get those cards and letters in. We do have 4 presenters today, including myself, Jim Murphy, James Whistler, and Aesh Gupta. And feel free to address your questions to any of the 4 of us. If they're not specifically addressed, then you kind of get whoever I pass them along to. So I'd like to share with you several very interesting quotes that we've had from our presenters today to show you what they're doing to grow their business in this economy, even in this environment. Jim Murphy from River City Software added 3 employees over the last 5 months, and he passed work on to 5 other contractors. How many of you can say that you actually did that in the last year? James Whistler in the UK, 70% of his customers are now contracting for multiple projects. So he's built a very nice repeat business stream there. And equally impressive from Aesh Gupta in New York, grew a business from basically a 1-person operation to a 16-member team during perhaps one of the weakest economies in memory. So are you growing like this? Well, if not, what are you waiting for? The secret, or at least one of the secrets that we'll share with you today, is how to outshine your competition using application generation to win a bigger share of the business. It's basically a way to outfox your competition. And here's how you can use application generation to outfox your competition. Imagine walking into a pitch meeting with a prospective client. You're probably one of several that they've invited to pitch an offer, and showing them a prototype that you have built using their own database, something that they can actually use to visualize what their application might look like. And your time investment in that prototype is very minimal, just a few hours to prepare, probably about as much effort as you would have put into a normal presentation anyway. And as I said, the great part of all of this is that it lets them visualize what that application might look like. No, it's not going to be perfect, out of the gate, but it's certainly something for them to look at, feel, and touch, and it's certainly way more than any of your competition is going to be doing. And your secret weapon is application generation. Now, we can use application generation to build prototypes and complete applications straight from your database. The way it works is pretty simple. You point an application generation tool like Iron Speed Designer at an existing database and generate an application. The applications Iron Speed Designer produces are professionally designed, so they look like they've had a graphic designer design them, because they have effectively. The applications that are produced are full-featured. In fact, probably contain more features than most applications you would build by hand for a client would contain. Well, all that extra functionality comes for free. Application security is built in, and that's a very great thing because security is very, very important in today's environment, as it always has been, but I think there's certainly a heightened interest in application security, and that comes built in. And finally, and perhaps more importantly, all the applications you build are going to look consistent. It's not going to look like 5 different developers built 5 different applications. They're all going to look the same because they're all structured the same, have the same look and feel, and so forth. So now let's let our 3 software consultants show you how they use application generation to grow in today's market. We'll lead off here this morning with Jim Murphy from River City Software. And he's pointed out that he's been able to grow his single-person business into a company with multiple employees over the past year or 2. And perhaps equally importantly, he's expanded from a simple home-based business into office space with a much more professional look and feel. With that, let's switch over now to Jim, and we'll let him take it from there.
Thank you, Alan. Let me get the screen showing here. All right. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was pricing. There's a handful of different ways to price a project, and really how we price Well, it depends. Really, we try to adapt to the way the customer likes to do it. Some customers prefer to do things fixed and cap it with a specific budget, whereas other customers, maybe they don't have requirements, so they just want time and materials. Iron Speed Designer allows you to, or allows us to kind of tailor whatever way that they need. So the way we do it is, if they have strong requirements, we would do it fixed, and that allows us to add a little extra pad to cover any unknowns that you and I know always inevitably crop up. Or if they don't have solid requirements and they're just wanting to go without exactly knowing where they're going, then we like to switch them on a time and materials. But there's also an alternate way, a third way, and that's project-based. So they might want a full-time resource or a quarter of a full-time resource or something like that. So lots of ways to mix and match that. The nice thing about Iron Speed Designer is that it helps by providing fewer unknowns. So a lot of the infrastructure, all that stuff is all done. Design difficulties with infrastructure, all those things are kind of handled. That allows us to just really work on our own areas of adding in the business logic rather than dealing with all this mundane code and the risk that comes along with that. As far as the rates that we charge, that also depends much on the work. We basically give price breaks for larger commitments, kind of a volume discount, as it were. So now the warning there is everyone seems to call and says there are more projects in back of this and huge projects in back of this in an effort to drive down the upfront cost. Sometimes they're correct and sometimes they're not. So, so really the way we like to do that is, even if they promise the sky afterwards, we will still charge them a higher rate if their only commitment is for a small commitment. And then as it seems to go on or approach a higher threshold, we'll be happy to discount the price after that. And we really get very little pushback on that. Everyone fully understands that that's really not a problem. Iron Speed Designer helps with the pricing of this, because the customer doesn't have to pay for all of this pagination infrastructure, sorting and reverse sorting, filtering, and all the kind of basics. The customer doesn't have to pay for that. They get that for free. And of course, the customer is not going to mind paying a consultant's rate, which is usually much higher than an employee's rate, because we already sped through the whole 80% of the project. So they certainly don't mind paying a premium price to get the last 20% business logic and whatnot put in there and put in there right. As far as coding comfort, this is one thing we really like, especially with a company with multiple employees. We don't get the fatigue of boring pagination programming or searching or using Photoshop. Not all of us are very graphically oriented. We're more on the nuts and bolts side of things, generally speaking. So we let Iron Speed take the load on that, and this allows us to work on all the fun stuff, all the business rules, the formulas, things like when you add an order to automatically email somebody, make a PDF and send that off to somebody else, and put it in a queue for approval so that the manager can approve or decline those. So little workflows, all that stuff, that's the fun stuff. For me, not pagination. I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. Iron Speed is also very flexible, and it allows you to see not only what you see is what you get, but there's a lot more you can add to it. So let me show you a brief demo as an example of that. Now, you've all seen Iron Speed applications, so I'm not really going to show you a normal Iron Speed application. I'm going to show you one that we've changed quite a bit, just so you can kind of see what the potential is. That's really the goal. So if we log in, you can see here that we've got a dashboard that we've set up with charts. Now, these happen to be third-party controls. So whether you want to use third-party controls or the built-in Iron Speed charts, you do have that flexibility. And dynamic help or news that comes up at the top, so the customer can advertise to their users. And we've integrated other third-party charts and grids and controls. The nice thing is, by flipping over to a tab, there is a built-in reporting services report right in the app. So everything is seamless and integrated, and all the details are there. and whatnot. So you might look at this and think, wow, is that an IronSpeed app? Well, yes, it is. There's a lot of menu items here, and a lot of these menu items are straight IronSpeed. Some of them are massaged somewhat, but at the same time, for some of the other areas that are very heavy on the business logic where IronSpeed can't automate it because it's so unique to the customer, then we can choose to drop in a third-party control and do whatever part we want, I guess by hand, as it were, leaving IronSpeed to do all of the rest of the application. So that really helps to scope these projects and to price them so we can isolate out what's mundane pagination-like programming and simple screens over a database and what's going to be truly unique to that customer. A word of caution. You must know databases. That is one thing about IronSpeed Designer. It is dependent on how the database is structured, how it's defined, primary and foreign keys, and whatnot. With a poor database design, you end up with a poor application. And then it feels like trying to pound square pegs into round holes in order to get the application to work around a faulty database design. So if I can leave you with a word of recommendation, understand normalization. Understand what that is. You may already know that, and if so, you're in good shape. And you don't need to do anything spectacular to your database other than good, normal normalization. That'll really help you generate and regenerate your applications effectively. One thing I really like to do is I spend a little extra time up front working on the database, and then I make several throwaway IronSpeed applications. I'll click on Next, Next, Finished, have an app, click around, edit some data, realize some flaws to my design. Maybe I missed a foreign key. Something should be a drop-down, but it's not. And instead of modifying the application, I find in the early stages it's easier to just fix my schema, make another throwaway application, and do it again and again and again. After 4 or 5 or 6 different throwaway applications to get the idea and to prove the database, okay, now we can remove all the throwaways, make one nice final application, and then from there begin building onto it. That saved us a lot of rework and changes. So the key here is to make sure the database is proved up front. That helps. Security. I really appreciate IronSpeed's authentication and authorization. They've got a wonderful wizard that runs through that, and whether it is your own security with the user's roles table, or whether it is Active Directory hitting an LDAP server, either way it is fine. In fact, I just made an application for a customer where they want Active Directory authentication against their LDAP server, but they want their roles to be handled by the application. So we're using a role table and a user table, but the true authentication with the password and whatnot, and all the password complexity rules and all the rest of that, there is no password in our tables. All that's handled by Active Directory. IronSpeed can handle and cope with that. It didn't need coding or recoding at all. Just ran through a wizard. It was great. And as far as SQL injection, let me tell you about SQL injection. Of course, that's a big problem, and it's a big problem out there. You keep reading the news articles on that. Now, the nice thing is, on one of the projects, our customer hired a professional security team to run their tools and really analyze what the security risk is of the IronSpeed generated application. Now, did they find problems in all the IronSpeed generated code? I'm happy to report no. They only found problems where we would write code and we would miss something or not think of how to cleanse the URL string or something like that. So our custom code had to be really carefully handled and in a few cases fixed. But all that infrastructure, the whole breadth of this whole app was great and solid. And that's comforting to have a third-party certificate for that. So all the security is built in for free. IronSpeed handles all of the security by coding it all into the classes, the logic, and they put all of that in there for you so that we don't have to pay for that, neither does our customer. That gives us the competitive edge against all the hand coders. Our price can be a lot less, a lot lower, and yet we're not we're not assuming all of that cost ourselves. So IronSpeed really does help us to succeed, and because of that, we've expanded our business, hired employees to help us with the work, and moved into a larger office space actually right just under a year ago. So all of that because IronSpeed gave us the advantage. So with that, just wanted to thank you, and I'll turn this back over to Alan.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Jim. I appreciate that. It was super informative. In fact, I really liked your comment about fewer unknowns. In the words of the great philosopher of our time, Donald Rumsfeld, there are known unknowns and unknown unknowns. And as we all know, in developing software, it's all of the unknown unknowns that you have to worry about. And if you can reduce complexity, reduce the amount of development work that you have to do, that gives you a little more flexibility, a little more time in that project schedule to handle those unknown unknowns, those changes in shifting requirements that clients are apt to spring on you at the last moment. Kind of following up on that, application generation reduces development time, and that's really what gives you the flexibility. It gives you the flexibility so if your client prefers, you can bid fixed price in a contract, which some customers prefer to have, and that's potentially a competitive advantage against other people who may be bidding on the same project. It also gives you the opportunity to increase your margins because just because you're able to do the work in a lot less time using application generation doesn't mean that you have to charge a lot less for it either. In fact, you can charge the same rate that you might normally charge and essentially get a much bigger margin on your projects than you would otherwise. Really, a lot of this strategy is based on capturing the work up front rather than just giving your price a haircut to undercut the competition, which is rarely a winning strategy. Application generation also creates maintenance revenue streams for you a couple of different ways. One, it allows you to add monthly software maintenance fees to your quotes. Because IronSpeed Designer reduces maintenance costs, and I'll explain why in a minute, you'll find that a lot of the applications, or all of the applications, are identically structured, so they're much, much easier to maintain. And so there's really no learning curve for your development team when you move from one application to the next. If you've seen one structure produced by IronSpeed Designer, you really have seen them all, and that's where you build an economy of scale in building applications. So consequently, you can add a software maintenance fee to your quotes and have a much smaller expense in actually delivering against that. And that also allows you to add monthly support or services to your quote, which is another way to increment your revenue over time. It allows you to add training services, for example. And again, that's all very easy because applications that are generated are identically structured, they're consistent, and so the amount of training that you have to do to learn about that application you've just produced is actually nil because all of the applications are identically structured and they look the same, they're very consistent, and so forth. Let's move on now to James Whistler, our second presenter from the UK. And one of the most interesting things you'll find about James is that over half of his business is actually outside of the UK. So he's really become a global entity operating out of a small town outside of Oxford, England. With that, why don't we switch to James and take it away.
Right, thank you, Alan. I hope everyone can see my screen now, and I hope you can hear me. Our town's not that small, at least I don't think so. So yes, here's my presentation on how we've been attempting to grow our consulting business over the last year or two. We're going to run through a number of different points, some of which are kind of fairly standard terminology that you would expect from running any kind of business, frankly. what I hope is that I can show you how IronSpeed can help you to improve on some of those points and make your life easier as a business owner and manager rather than just as a developer operating in your business. So the first thing that we've attempted to do was to identify our market. And the fantastic thing about having acquired our expertise in Designer is that we've managed to realize, we effectively made a quantum leap of a decision that our market was no longer geographical. Most of the competitor consultancies that work geographically close to us tend to work for companies who are also geographically close to them. We suddenly realized that the expertise we were acquiring enabled us to go and identify a completely separate market sector. And using that expertise, we've managed to expand, as Alan said, such that now more of our business is coming outside of the UK, rather not even necessarily within our area of the country. So we've had to, in doing that, we've obviously had to learn what our strengths are or what they may be. Principally, we've identified that the IronSpeed market is a sizable one, that people want to use the product to deliver most of the benefits that Jim was talking about, so things such as the robustness of generated applications, for example. But perhaps people struggle when they get to the point where they're really trying to take their application onto the next level. When we talk about differentiating ourselves from our customers, we'll talk a little bit more about what we've attempted to do in that way as we go forward. But principally, it's been very much a question of defining the niche. In our case, clearly it's an IronSpeed one, and delivering to our customers that increased benefit from generation. So making clear to them how we can build their apps quicker, frequently at fixed prices, much along the lines of what Jim Murphy was talking about earlier. Having learned a little bit more about ourselves and where we wanted to take it, we decided that in order to achieve or try and maximize on that growth, we were going to obviously have to prepare for it. The first thing we'd done in doing that was to recruit staff. So we identified at an early stage, whilst we had some IronSpeed expertise within the company, we needed to expand upon that. One of the fantastic things about Designer, as Alan mentioned, is that the underlying framework underneath all of the apps that we work on is consistent as it's generated by Designer. So once we've got a member of staff skilled on the product, it's very easy to move resources around past projects between people and get the best value out of them in that way. Additionally, and without wishing to take advantage of people, clearly we are under a degree of financial pressure globally, and in that situation we've managed to find people at comparatively little cost. We've invested in infrastructure, principally IronSpeed licenses, oddly enough, but at the same time we've needed to expand, and we're now using cloud machines for development. We've gone into a completely virtual operating environment such that our staff can work in or out of the office. We've all got access to documentation, etc., from everywhere that we go. Of course, we've trained our people. Additionally, though, in that training, the more busy we've become, the less down or unbilled time we have. So trying to allocate time to that training has become more and more of a challenge. I'm thinking there really of the supporting products that we use in our development environment around Designer, but certainly we've had to make sure that we make the best of that time rather than simply popping out and having nice lunches and things. In addition to the investment, we've been trying to reduce costs, specifically fixed ones, and moving to variable costs whenever we can. So things like utilizing cloud-based servers. We use rack space, for example, for development machines. The moment that a project's not being worked on, we can take an image of those cloud machines, shut that box down, and we stop paying for it at that moment. So we're definitely trying to do that wherever we possibly can. In addition, where we've identified tasks which are critical to a project which we don't have in-house expertise for, rather than necessarily attempting to acquire that expertise, we've focused our expertise strictly on the Designer environment. Whenever we encounter these tasks, we've outsourced them to an appropriate third party. We've used evaluation versions of whatever software product we can acquire wherever possible again. SQL 2008 Express is a great example. Now that the memory sizes are larger, we've very rarely found in a development environment that it hasn't been sufficient for application development and testing. And now, of course, we all benefit from the fantastic model of subscription licensing, which is now being offered within Designer. That fits perfectly with our cloud-based use of development boxes. We can immediately get more licenses and acquire greater development bandwidth whenever we need it, and then subsequently release it when we don't, which has really helped us to move that from a fixed overhead to a variable one. Thinking back about the business side and interacting with our customers, the principal thing we've tried to do, possibly our biggest differentiator with our immediate competition, is to try to develop our customer relationships. So we try to work as closely as possible with those customers, demonstrate their value to us wherever we possibly can. Part of that has been approaching things at an early stage in negotiating with a new customer or an inquiry, is never to turn work away. In this particular environment, we frequently get contacted by customers through email accounts such as Gmail or Yahoo or something of that nature. And your instinctive reaction is to assume that this is someone that possibly we don't want to be involved with, they're possibly small time. That frequently isn't the case. We've had examples where that person is actually a CTO of a quite major firm, and they've deliberately approached us from such an email account because they don't want us to know who they are, professionally speaking. So any contract we've looked at, we've certainly never immediately turned our nose at them at an early stage. We make sure that all of our communication is of value to the customer, and principally we always stay in touch. So even if we've promised somebody an update and we don't have quite the update we were hoping to deliver to them, we would still contact them if only to say that we didn't have an update. Impressions. First impressions, of course, are super critical in the business world, as they are possibly in the social one as well. The principal part is to make those impressions count, and that is where Designer can really help you. Some of our customers have come to us through our IronSpeed expertise, and some have not. And those that have not come to us through our IronSpeed expertise, Designer enables us to produce an incredibly high-quality prototype application for them at in an incredibly short time frame and of high quality. And that's something which, frankly, once we've had an opportunity to do that, we very rarely don't win the deal. So Designer certainly helps us enormously at the point where we're doing a pitch to move forward and attempt to develop that business and make sure that we secure it. You've got, obviously, of course, it's critical to listen to our customers, understand how they like to do business, but critically, never to assume to know what they want. We need to, because Designer enables us to build these apps so much faster, it's critical to make sure that we've understood the requirements at the beginning of the project. One of the other enormous benefits to us of using Designer is that we've effectively completely given up the process of documenting and specifying content for applications. We can build it now quicker than we can write about building it. We don't write specifications, we build prototypes. Frankly, it adds a great deal more value. A customer would far rather look through application screens for what's missing than they would read through a 60-page specification document that clearly has taken us a great deal of time and money to produce. The benefit of that, of course, that prototype then evolves into the delivered application. So rather than that specification being consigned to the scrap heap and us leveraging no return on that time, we can do so by using prototyping. Designer enables us to do that quickly. Critically, of course, the robustness of that generated code enables us to reduce the testing requirements that we need. Strictly speaking, we tend to focus our testing on the areas that we've customized and not the areas which are strictly generated that we've not touched. And critically, of course, within the IronSpeed community, nearly every scenario you could encounter with customization has probably been worked on before. So if you look through the knowledge base, on the forums, etc., the chances are that you'll be able to find an example, possibly not of exactly what to do, but you'll find something close that you can then customize for your own benefit. Delivery, of course, is pretty critical. We make sure that we try to keep our releases very well defined so that our customers understand what it is that we're giving to them. But critically, rather than ever delivering a purely technical release, we try to do so such that the content of that release is always delivering at least on some of the key business benefits for the product. And of course, we do so on time. The quality control is also very key. Again, while software is never perfect, the issue is invariably with our customization and not with the generated application. So that's our main points. learn who you are, find out what your expertise and your niche will be, invest time and money into identifying that niche and how you're going to move forward with it, keep your costs down, and once you get those leads, make sure that you make them count. They are hard to find in this climate. Designer can help you make sure that when you do get an inquiry, you secure it and you don't lose it. And the one other thing is to be prepared to work hard. May sound obvious, but a designer can help you to be very busy, and I would strongly recommend that you prepare yourself, because you may well end up being a lot busier than you had thought possible. So with that, I will hand you back over to Alan. Alan, I don't know exactly what I need to do, if I need to do anything.
I think we're set. Thanks very much, James. Now let me do a little bit of setup for our third presenter here, and he's really illuminated one very interesting point to me, which is that as you start to use application generation, you can actually build a layered or structured team around that entire philosophy that makes your work much more efficient than it would be if you just had a team of developers kind of in the undifferentiated sense. Here, you're able to actually structure a team with different skills that provide a much more efficient workflow for you as a consultant. And basically what Aesh will tell you is that application generation lets you stratify your development team. And one of the ways that he's done that is to have specialists in different areas, such as database design, page layout, or graphic artists, and then traditional business logic, meaning coding. So you don't really have to have a team that's kind of jack of all trades. You can have a database guy, a graphic artist, and so forth. And of course, those folks have different pay scales than developers. But to reiterate Jim's point up front about you really need to focus on your database architecture to get the best results out of IronSpeed Designer or any application generation tool. If you have somebody who's very experienced at data modeling, database design, that can really, really leverage your entire development effort. He's been able to do that really nicely in his own business. So with that, let's switch over now to Aesh. Aesh has done some amazing things because he's really, over the last several years, grown to be a substantial business, starting from just a one-man outfit. And I think he himself would tell you that he's not the most deep technical guy around, but he's been able to leverage application generation to really build a development team and a very vibrant and growing consulting business. And I think his major milestone, which I just heard this morning, is that he's actually been able now to take a vacation for the first time in quite a while. He's actually got the business operating like it should be. So with that, Aesh, why don't you take it from here?
All right, thanks, Alan. All right, folks, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. First of all, I want to appreciate everyone able to come today. I would like to introduce, as a software development, what is basically Lightspeed all about, or what is this whole need for IronSpeed. We all have worked in the software development field for many years, and hence we are here to learn more about IronSpeed. And software is not about making something, it's about making something that works. As we all know, we have tried to deliver things, some work, some don't. And in this economy, our clients will always evaluate with our last work. We could have done some excellent work for our clients over the years, but if the last work doesn't work, we basically are nowhere anymore. The business challenges are client will keep on changing their requirements, timeline and budget are always a constraint, and then who has the time to spend on QA as well as testing. And once you have successfully delivered a product or project to a client, you can move on, and the client will always call you with a rush job to say, I need these things fixed now, and please quote me reasonably because it's just a small change, and do it fast. And that is where, when we basically started looking at why my older ventures didn't work, because I was always working as a single man. I was always trying to do every single thing by hand. And that's why when things came down to fixing things, enhancing things, it was really difficult. And as I tried to hire outside resources, it was not consistent. So even if I have hired an outside consultant to help me out when I needed them, when the time came to maintain it, that's basically where I once again failed. So one lucky day when I found RSP Designer and I started looking under the hood, all the dreams came to reality that with RSP Designer, I can design, develop, validate, train, and support with such a ease because RSP Designer itself has done most of the grunt work for us. All of you are here to learn more about how RSP can help. First of all, what it will generate is going to be so consistent that you can blindly do find and replace in bulk, and system will be perfect. Of course, you need to know what you're finding and replacing it. The business layer has been so rock solid that for the last 6 years, we never had a defect in RSP business layer as well as the data layer. It works. Of course, if someone changes the database and doesn't regenerate the business layer and the data layer, that's a different story. But if you are up to date in your RSP Designer with the business layer and data layer, it's rock solid. All the UI looks alike, which basically points to Alan's initial point that he raised. Once you have done the training on a single product, subsequent products or projects that you develop for a client, they are a lot easier to be introduced in any corporate environment. And when the client comes back to us and say, please make these changes, not a problem. Because since every single thing is done in a very consistent manner, support and enhancements have become very straightforward. The logic or the mantra that we have followed is we want to build maintenance-friendly applications. That's basically kind of the theme that I started 5-6 years ago, that it was not difficult for me to get a client, but once I was having a client come to me, deliver the work, it was difficult to keep him or her happy or the company happy because we were not building maintenance-friendly applications. And if you're doing everything by hand, of course you can't. So as far as who are we? We are an agile software development company who has successfully delivered many applications in 2/3 of the time. You can really basically say that anyone who's trying to do an outsourcing of any type of project, that because of RSP Designer, you can build in 2/3 of the time and it will work. Our QA time has been reduced from 50% of the development effort to only 10% of the development effort because, as my peers Jim basically as well as James have mentioned, you only have to validate what is the business logic or what are the additional things you are working on. As far as the internal items, which are basically as part of the RSP Designer, you don't have to ever validate because they just work. The methodology, as everyone probably has seen from their experience, you define a scope, you work with your use cases, you go through the data models, and this is where you can use RSP Designer to keep coming up with different prototypes very quickly rather than writing the specifications. Just like James and Jim, we tend not to write documentation anymore. It is better to come up with a prototype in RSP Designer, share with the audience, and get their feedback. And once the initial design is confirmed, give them the first iteration of the project. In the first iteration of the project, we basically focus on building the UI and do not implement any of the rules or logic or the workflow. Let the audience buy in to the UI. So once they're satisfied with the UI, the second iteration is when we focus on all the code customizations and so on, because the iteration 1 to iteration 2 is very important because somewhere you have to define the responsibility on the client side. By following this two iteration process, after iteration 1, if the client is now changing the scope, which is the scope creep, which we all are afraid of, you have a very good defense mechanism to say, look, this has to be part of phase 2, or this will delay the timeline, which indeed helps you. And of course, if you want to help your clients say, okay, we'll do it one time, RSP really makes it very easy to implement. And of course, once iteration 2 is done, follow the testing acceptance and as well as the migration approach. That has been our development methodology. What have we achieved in the last 6 years? Built a 16-member software development team, and I started this all by myself. This is my 6th venture. Other 5 ventures worked, but they never got successful because the team was not there. We have 100% success rate with on-budget and on-time delivery. We have designed and developed enterprise application. A lot of folks might think that RNSpeed is only meant for small mom and pop shop applications or small databases. We have a client who has over 80 million rows in their main table. And RNSpeed Designer has built the application. It is zipping through it. It's a production application where the client is selling it software as a service with over 2,000 customers. Absolutely no problem. We have shared creative solutions in manufacturing, retail, communication, automotive, pharmaceutical, as well as defense industries. And those clients are also RNSpeed folks, meaning these customers have purchased RNSpeed Designer, and they have realized the potential. The only thing they needed a little help was how to use the product, by us training them, by us sharing with them how they can use the forums, and how open RNSpeed community is. They really are taking all the advantage of the RNSpeed towards their development efforts. We also have successfully delivered RNSpeed workshops in the US, and as you can see, all of us MVPs try to help the community by answering their questions. Here's one of the applications. This is where I think what Alan was trying to mention, that if you have some graphics person who you can take advantage of, you can definitely make a very nice professional application. I'm going to give you a demo of an application which we built for our sister company, which is ExecuTrain. If I log in here, you may not think the application is using RNSpeed Designer, but this is entirely done in RNSpeed Designer with some magic from graphics people. So, of course, I do not know the password now. I apologize for this. Here you go. So as you can see, once you log in, you can basically see a lot of things about different things. These are basically show table pages. Then when you expand on it, these are the edit pages and so on. And as you can see, the look and feel might be a little bit different than what you're used to, but this is all very easily possible because RNSpeed uses the standard CSS as well as regular .NET logic. So if somebody knows HTML, CSS, as well as graphics, you can really extend the application very quickly. I'm going to probably just go back here. So in summary, RNSpeed solutions will always lead to better results, which basically makes your team stronger. You need to focus on business processes, and it will make sure that you do on-time and on-budget delivery. It's very important that you play with RNSpeed Designer. If you have not done so, learn about all the ins and outs. And as you go to the client, try to focus on the business processes. Once you have learned them, we basically come back, design the data model, and rather than giving people a proposal with only documentation, give them a proposal along with a URL, and you can say, look, this URL may not be as finished product, but this should give you some idea of what we are even thinking, which will really reinforce in the client's mind that you are delivering, you are over-delivering even for the proposal stage, as well as you can verify that what you are envisioning is what the client really needs. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I will actually turn the presentation back to you, Ellen. Thank you, guys.
Great. Thanks very much, Akesh. Let me just wrap up here over the next couple of minutes, and then there's kind of a story I'd like to share with you, and then we'll conclude with questions and answers. So in summary, why use RNSpeed Designer? Well, quite simply because you're looking to do more with less. It not only speeds application development, but simultaneously cuts software development costs. We found in a survey of our customer applications that it saved on average 19 person weeks of development per application, or about $37,000 of actual hard costs in development time. You'll also find that software testing time is greatly reduced. That's because you're effectively leveraging the Q&A that we've done on RNSpeed Designer here ourselves, plus the testing of designer-generated applications done by our thousands of customers. And so it's pretty rock solid and reliable. And I'd like to go back to that earlier point that application maintenance is greatly simplified. That's because all applications produced by RNSpeed Designer are structured identically. So while the names of classes and database tables and fields and so forth may be different, the architecture, the bones of the system are identical. So once you have a developer that understands that, he can move from one application to the other, even if he didn't develop it initially, and pick it up and continue maintaining and evolving that application without any ramp-up time whatsoever. IronSpeed Designer builds database applications. That's kind of the short way of saying it, and those can be anything that you want it to be. It can be business processes that you're automating, reporting and tracking applications, workflow and scheduling applications, and as we've been trying to emphasize, using it for rapid prototyping. And in just a second, I'm going to show you how easy it is to create a rapid prototype. From the technical level, IronSpeed Designer generates a .NET web application. So it's an N-tier application consisting of a presentation layer of ASPX pages, code behind files, a business layer, a data access layer, and if your database so permits it, stored procedures. And we do this all just by pointing at a database. It really is that simple. So let me show you how easy it is to create a prototype with IronSpeed Designer. I want to invite all of you to attend a demo that we hold nearly every Friday morning at 8 a.m. Just go to our website and sign up from there. And you can see IronSpeed Designer in a little more detail. But let me just flip over here very quickly to IronSpeed Designer. This is what Designer looks like when it starts up. And I'm going to build a prototype app now. Not a finished app, but a prototype. And so I'm going to start with our application wizard here. I'm going to click the Next button. And now you go through, and we have about 30-odd different looks and feels, different style sheets that you can choose from. You can pick one, and if you don't like it, go back to the application wizard and change it again, even after you've built your application. It's very easy to switch from one look to another if you don't like it. If you're pitching a client, of course, pick something that's pretty close to their corporate colors. That's the easy thing to do. Then just add their logo at some point, and you've got a client-ready prototype. I'm just going to pick McKinley because it generates screens with a high contrast, and it's easy to see in this format. Now let's assume that I followed Jim Murphy's advice, and I've actually spent an hour or two doing a little bit of data modeling before I go and pitch this client. I've gotten his database beforehand, or maybe his spreadsheet or spreadsheets, and I've built kind of a basic data model. In this case, the data model's a database that ships with IronSpeed Designer that you can use for exploration called Southwind. It's an order management system for a fictitious company. I'm just going to select that database. And now, this is kind of the easy part and perhaps the most powerful. We just simply select what pages we want for what tables. So this little database has got 10 tables, so I'm just going to pick all of them. And you can go and see the actual different types of pages over here on the right that we can produce and add or remove them. I've got 8 defaults selected here, but you could pick and choose any combination you want and for different tables. So you can pick and choose different pages for different tables if you want. But just to make it easy, I'm going to pick the standard 8 defaults for my 10 tables or 80 pages in total. I'm going to skip this next step. IronSpeed Designer also creates multilingual applications. So if I'm building something, say, for European delivery and I want a few extra languages in here, maybe I select some of these, where there are translations, and so that way the user can select an application runtime, give my application a name, select a few other options, and I'm pretty much good to go. At that point, this is really all we need to do to create an application. IronSpeed Designer is going to go to work now against that database. It's going to build an application folder and install in that application folder a set of configuration files based on the database tables you selected and some other options that were pre-selected as what we call application generation options. As you can see, it's kind of whizzing through those pages, those ASPX pages right now. Probably your screen isn't updating as fast as it is here on mine. And it's creating all of the code for me, a complete N-tier application. And so at this point, I'm pretty much done. It's launched my application now in a separate browser, which calls upon the .NET Framework compiler to compile my application. So while we're waiting for the .NET compiler to compile, let me tell you a little bit of a story. This is the story that I wanted to to share with you, and it really brought home to me the power of a good demonstration, even if the demonstration has nothing to do with what you're pitching your client. Years ago, my little 4-person company, that's 4 people, of which I was a principal, was pitching a major American brokerage house, Charles Schwab and Company, to build a what was essentially a shrink-wrapped customer installable trading platform that they could put on their home computer and use it to trade online. This was in the days before the web. This was the early 90s. And my competition, I happen to know going into pitching Schwab for this account, was Electronic Data Systems, which had, I don't know, 50 or 100,000 employees, and SHI Systems House, which is kind of a Canadian equivalent of EDS, 10,000 employees, something like that, right? And here's my little 4-person firm competing against these, monstrous companies out there with way more experience. But I thought about it for a minute and decided that I had one advantage which they didn't, and I elected just to kind of bring a visual aid along just to kind of highlight that. My background was in building consumer shrink-wrap applications. These are things that went in boxes that went on store shelves, like in Egghead, if any of you are old enough to remember the Egghead discount software stores that used to be around the country. And so I started my presentation, introduced myself, my partner, and so forth. And I said, what we do is we build consumer shrink wrap applications. I took about a half a dozen of those things out of a bag that I'd brought. These are just previous things that I had built that had nothing whatsoever to do with the brokerage business, and had no experience with the brokerage business, and just passed them around for people to look at. And then I started in my slideshow, my presentation. And I noticed as I got into it that nobody was watching me, and I'm not even sure they were even listening to me. What they were transfixed on were those boxes that I had passed around, of titles, things, data encryption software called Off the Record, or a Gantt chart builder called Schedule Express, and a variety of different applications like that that had nothing to do with brokerage. And they were just transfixed looking at these boxes. And what I began to realize is that they were visualizing the product that they wanted to build, it's called Street Smart, by looking at these other shrink-wrap boxes. And that's really my point. It doesn't matter if this application built with their database or something that looks like their database is exactly what they want or not. They're going to be looking at this thing as you're doing your presentation. They're starting to visualize their application, how they might use it, and they say, well, yeah, this isn't exactly the screen that I want to see here, but it's got some of the data, and I'd rearrange it this way and that way. And right there, you'll have a leg up against your competition because you've invested an hour or two of data modeling and about 2 minutes of application generation to come up with a prototype here that, again, is not going to be the final finished product, but it doesn't have to be. It's just simply a conduit that allows your prospective customers the ability to visualize their final working application. And yes, we did get the business with Schwab. We built out the giant EDS and the semi-giant SHI system house, and had a very successful multi-year, multi-product relationship with Schwab because of that. And who knows why, but the only comment that I can make is that people were absolutely transfixed looking at those shrink-wrap boxes that had nothing to do with the brokerage industry. With that, I'm going to switch over now and take a few questions. So we've got a number, I'll get to that a little bit later here. Let's start here with Joe's question. He says, thank you for the session. You're most welcome. We appreciate it. We hope you found it beneficial. Do you have a marketing guideline how to get customers how to sell a base to prices, asks Roberto. We really don't. I think most consultants kind of have their own way of doing business, their own rates and so forth. But that's actually kind of an interesting suggestion. We've heard that once or twice before. So thank you for adding your voice to that. Let's give that some thought. That might be a good way to help the designer community. Ramesh asks, can we download the entire presentation? We probably will post this at some point in time, maybe over the next week or two. We do have, I believe, a prior version of this presentation that we held last year on the videos page on our website, so you can actually watch last year's presentation. And if you go to the video demos page, it's in the lower right-hand corner there. But keep an eye out on that page, and we'll probably upload this, the video of this in the next week or so. Adam asks, any thought on disintermediation? I worry about prospective clients becoming aware of iron speed and saying, this is great, what do I need you for? So I'm going to ask a couple of our presenters here to answer that. So Jim, if you're on the line, perhaps you can take it first, and then I'll ask Akesh to give his thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting question. And there are two ways we handle that. When it's a smaller project with a smaller company, we don't necessarily have to disclose or need to disclose, because we're usually dealing with like the owner or the CTO, and he doesn't have a development team. All he wants is his application completed and done, so his employees can be more effective for his customers. However, we also have customers that are quite large, and for those we definitely disclose. We tell them right up front exactly what our intention is, what application we're using, and if they have any concerns, we can even demo the product, and any concerns can be handled at that point. And then as far as them getting the feeling that what do they need us for, that's really just managing that. We just let them know right up front that, hey, this thing doesn't just, it's not a magic wand that just handles everything for you. It just gets us down the road. And it does all of the boring, simple stuff like pagination and a basic look and feel and a basic framework. But then based on that, now we've got to add your custom business rules. So as long as we keep hitting that point over and over and over again, then the customer seems to understand that, clicking next finish is not going to be the end of the application.
Great, thanks, Jim. Akesh, what are your thoughts on the disintermediation issue? What do I need you for if you're using Designer?
All right. As a matter of fact, folks, to be really frank, it has come to our advantage, because think about if you're building a critical solution for your client. One of their worries is, what if you win a $10 million lotto, you're gone. Let's not talk about you get hit by a truck. Then once they find out that you are using a product which they can even go back and look for more assistance, it usually calms their concern that you are building a product for their company, and you may not be the only person. As a matter of fact, it has helped us once we share with the audience that, look, we are using a product to aid. It's like if somebody was to give us a document to type, we can say we use Word. In case something goes wrong, you can use Word to edit it. So I think actually I found it more useful to disclose that we are using a product. And if those folks are great at doing what they're doing, then chances are they probably already know about it.
Great, thank you. Next comment from Carl is good information, great product. Well, thanks very much. We appreciate that, Kudo, Carl. Thanks very much. Also, Carl asks, my problem is how to find customers. My telephone book advertising has not worked. What's a telephone book? I think actually they're outlawing those in San Francisco, I read the other day. James, perhaps you can lead off on that one. How do you find customers?
Of course, thanks, Arne. I would agree with you. Any kind of telephone-based advertising we've done, Carl, has also not worked. And particularly in this kind of an economic climate, then finding the customer who is bona fide that you want to do business with is the hard part of the job. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any magic wand to enable you to find them other than the sort of more standard marketing approaches that you might try and develop in any other business. Where Designer can help you is that when you do get an inquiry or a lead, you can capitalize on it with a far greater chance of success. So that's really been our approach, not necessarily unfortunately being inundated with inquiries, but making sure that we convert as many of them to a deal or a sale as we possibly can.
Jim, how are you getting customers?
I wanted to talk about the MVP program just barely, and I know that's on your next slide, Alan. But that is one thing that really helps as well, because yeah, the phone book, yeah, that's I think that's from the 70s. I think I read a Wikipedia article on what those are. But frankly, the internet is the way that businesses today need to leverage in order to succeed. The MVP program helps with that by partnering with IronSpeed. And then the other way that we get leads outside of the MVP program would just be word of mouth from other satisfied customers. So that's building a network and getting to know people out there.
Okay, great. John asks, I've experienced server timeouts in certain instances with a large number of rows in a database. Do you have any suggestions on how to deal with this issue? I'm also going to ask Aesh to comment on this because he's dealt with some very large databases for his customers. But in my experience, John, usually if you're getting a server timeout, it's because you're doing a full table scan in your database, which is a function of your database, not of IronSpeed Designer. Quite likely there is some field that's being used in a where clause or a query generated by Designer that is not indexed in your database. So anything that you might click on to sort, anything that you might filter on, you know, any of those fields needs to be indexed in your database. If the database is properly indexed relative to the queries that Designer is generating, we've not really had any instances where people are timing out. It's usually because, in my experience, because of database indexing or lack thereof. Aesh, what's your experience on this?
Actually, as a matter of fact, Alan, as you mentioned, it's usually the indexes. If the indexes are not defined properly, that basically will do a complete table scan. The best part here is using basically the using the tracing tool. He can very easily find out what command was executed, and when you try to run those commands in your SQL Server, Oracle Server, it will even show you the path it took as whether the system did a whole table scan and so on. If you have your tables properly indexed, like we have almost a table with 80 million rows, it is pretty quick. Of course, if somebody says, go ahead and do a total of every single record and there are 80 million of them, then it's a very large transaction. Then those type of transactions have to be thought about in doing a little separate where you can make views which already have the data already totaled up. So if you're just trying to show a regular table, the chances are indexes are off.
Great. Tom asks, hi, in the first screen of Aesh's demo after logging on, there was a table control. Any hints as to how he got that? Is it third party or is it something in IronSpeed Designer training I need to brush up on? So Aesh, I'll let you answer that one.
All right. We basically have been using developer, I said developer, DevExpress. DevExpress is a third-party tool. As you will notice that what you're generating out of IronSpeed works, but sometimes some clients have asked for some additional features which are not standard to regular .NET. For that, you have to kind of rely on other third-party controls. IronSpeed Designer makes it very easy for anyone to introduce third-party controls and hook it with their existing pages. So we basically have used the DevExpress controls for those grids. Hope it answers your question.
Okay, thanks. Bill asks, this has been informative, but I've used IronSpeed for years. What I was hoping I'd learn in this webinar is how to market and find the customers. That's the biggest challenge we face. Well, as Jim mentioned earlier, and I'll just switch to this slide here, is we do have an MVP program that is designed to, in part, send leads to folks. We get contacted on a regular basis by our customers looking for help in building projects. You know, like anything, just because you have IronSpeed Designer, if you're a software development manager or running an IT group, doesn't mean that you've got the time to do it yourself. You may still need some help. And so one of the ways to do it, as Jim mentioned, is to become an IronSpeed MVP, where you work with our account managers on accounts that we have to help fulfill that service need. We don't offer any professional services at IronSpeed. We rely on folks such yourself to do that. If you're interested in becoming an MVP, please contact your account manager at IronSpeed, and they'll be happy to go over that with you. But let me also ask James, how are you getting customers?
One of the things that we've attempted to do is to involve people at an early stage with comparatively little commitment by running online training, for example. And that gives us an opportunity to demonstrate our expertise with using the product without any major commitment on the other user's part. But I think what Jim was saying is entirely right, and obviously we've made numerous humorous comments about telephone book advertising, but the web really is your friend, and the more you can participate in things like the forum online, any kind of blog entry or contribution you can make to the community to demonstrate your expertise will certainly point people in your direction.
Great. Joe comments, just want to add that I managed to sign a deal just by presenting a sample application developed by IronSpeed. This is our very first time using that strategy and already showing results. Great. Well, thank you for that comment. Like I said with my little story, I've seen that work in the past myself. It really is an amazing thing, and I think people are just visual, and showing them anything remotely related to what they're doing helps set you apart from the competition that obviously is not going to build a prototype by hand just to win business. Bill says, another question. How do you deal with showing the prospect a prototype that appears to be a virtually completed project, probably for free, then asking for lots of dollars to produce their application? Jim, what are your thoughts on that? How do you show them a prototype and then want to charge them a bunch of money?
Okay. That's actually a really good question. And a lot of the time I manage that with words and expectations when we're discussing the requirements in the initial meetings and whatnot. One of the things I tend to do is, I guess, kind of test my customer. I might explain to them that we'll use a tool that's going to help us along and whatnot. But telling them clearly that it's not going to solve everything. It's just going to allow us to get a prototype, and we'll be able to have something to look at here very quickly. And if their language seems to be still thinking that this magic wand is going to solve absolutely everything out of the box, rather than really understanding everything that I'm telling them, then it requires a phase 2 of management. So what I do there is when I make a prototype. In the past, I have made a prototype using, there's one theme in there all the way at the very bottom called something like white or something like that. And it's pretty plain, pretty boring looking. It's boilerplate. And that allows us to not have something that looks so colorfully beautiful and complete per se. And then also what I have done in order to manage that relationship with a customer who doesn't seem to listen too clearly is to maybe make one page and demonstrate the pagination and whatnot, but rip off some of the other features. And then have another page where we rip off pagination and demonstrate another narrow feature. And then that way we can kind of give them a real narrow feel. So basically we undo some of the work that IronSpeed did in order to help manage the customer's expectations so they don't think that this thing is just completely done. Because some high executives only see the tip of the iceberg, and that's all they can see, and they think that's it. Now, I haven't had to do that much, but again, I test the customer, find out how reasonable they are, and if they're unreasonable, I kind of help manage their expectations so they don't misunderstand, causing other problems for us.
Okay, great. Let's see. Mazioletti, and I apologize if I've mispronounced that, asks, do you offer partnership to be a distributor and support for IronSpeed? I feel it can sell here. I work for a company where I introduced it, and it has helped us. Yes, we at IronSpeed do offer a resale discount as well as being part of our MVP program, which obviously is in part designed to funnel projects and leads your way, but we do offer reseller discounts if you're looking to resell IronSpeed Designer. If you do want to resell IronSpeed Designer, please contact your account manager here at IronSpeed. They'll be happy to put you in touch with our resale relationship manager. That's a woman named Patty Ainsworth, and Patty will be happy to get you all set up to do that. Jacob asks, is it possible to upgrade from subscription to a perpetual license? Yes, it is. Just cancel your subscription at any time when you're ready to purchase a perpetual license. Purchase your perpetual license, and that's about all there is to it. It's a pretty simple process. Bill says, thanks. FYI, your first bullet point describing this webinar is building lead flow to grow your business. Well, I think the presenters have all discussed a little bit about how they talk to folks, build clients, and so forth. So I think the short answer is that there's no one avenue people use. It's actually a multi-pronged approach. You know, some folks rely heavily on the MVP program. Other folks, such as James, have a fairly innovative set of training offerings that he uses to build lead flow and so forth. Peter says, are you using any kind of project management software to manage your projects, or are they assigned to specific employees that they then own from start to finish? So Akesh, let's lead off with you on that one.
All right, folks, we are using, first of all, Subversion, which is the SVN tool. You can use TFS as well as SVN. We have utilized both of them. What we basically are using for building our own internal project management, what we are using is we have built our own internal project management tool within IronSpeed. It's like telling the customer that we are using this product inside, so this way we know this product a lot more. Of course, you can easily buy some other products which allow you to do project management. So it all depends. Would you like to use an external product, or you can easily build your own if that's what you're looking for. It's very straightforward in building a tool like that within IronSpeed.
Okay, great. James, any thoughts on what you do to manage projects?
In the vast majority of cases, we actually haven't needed a sort of an environment for managing multiple developers, because we tend to manage projects along the lines of what you and Akesh were discussing earlier, in that we have the database design work, for example, be done by one fixed person, and they tend to own that project while the project's going through that part of the cycle. So we frequently, or very rarely rather, have ended up in a situation where we're having multiple people developing the same app at the same time. We deliberately try to manage our way around that. Where we do have to do that, like Akesh, we use Subversion to control it. And we have got our own kind of in-house IronSpeed application, again, which we use to help us manage that. But as far as is possible, we tend to split the project down into components which we can deliver to individual developers until they've completed their work.
I also have a note on that, if I may.
Yes, please.
And that is that, so we do things slightly differently. We've got a couple of projects that are quite sizable and have been going on for several years now. And with that, it would be normal for us to have not only multiple employees, but also help from contractors all at the same time, all crunching to get this thing buttoned up and out the door to start generating money for the customer so that they can continue to pay more maintenance and whatnot. And the way we did that, again, was with Subversion for the source control. But for project management, we used a tool called Gemini from a company called Countersoft. They won an award from ASP.NET for the best project management-related software. It's about 1,000 or two. And we really like that. It allows us to handle issues. It grants security so that our customers can add issues or comments or new features. And it has all the tracking and scoping so we can assign them to developers. And it ends up on the work queue for QA, so the QA knows what to test and how that matches the requirements and the document repository, and on and on and on. And there are lots of options out there, different products. I've used this one and a few free ones, and the free ones are worth their money. They stink, but I'm really happy with that one personally.
Great, thank you. Joe asks, can we find third-party tools listing on IronSpeed website help? Well, IronSpeed Designer has been designed to really accommodate any ASP.NET third-party control. The way that you integrate those third-party controls is exactly the same. Most third-party controls, if not all, for the .NET environment have a tag or a set of tags that you put in your page, and you do that through our cell editor. You just simply type it in design mode in our cell editor. And then oftentimes you have to put a register tag on the page, and you do that through our page directives dialog. And then finally, in most cases, you put a DLL for that third-party control into the applications bin folder. After that, there's not much else that you really need to do in most cases. So it really is a very, it's an identical process regardless of control. And so it really it doesn't matter one way or the other. Obviously, different folks use different controls. You heard Aesh mention that he uses some controls from DevExpress. I know he's used a number of Telerik controls in the past, integrated those very successfully. I've seen various charting and reporting tools used, ranging from Crystal Reports to Microsoft Reporting Services to a few others and so forth. I know Aesh has used Azenda as well. So we don't really have any particular listing, Joe, simply because we support them all pretty much in the same way. Peter says, thank you for the presentation. You're most welcome. Bill asks, as a follow-up question comment, I didn't realize that there was a demand for IronSpeed brand services. We've been focusing on general marketing for web app programming and had little success. Your advice sounds like it points us towards advertising. We are an IronSpeed professional, and that alone may help direct business towards us. Is this working for others? Jim, what are your thoughts on that question?
I'm sorry, I was answering Tom's question. Which question was that again?
Bill is asking, it sounds like your advice is pointing us towards advertising that we are an IronSpeed professional, and that alone may help direct business towards us. Is that working for others?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that is, because there's two methods of getting leads. One is on your own, advertising on the web, your website, blog entries or forums or whatever. And the other avenue is through the MVP program. So, yeah, of course, when they come through the MVP program, they already know about IronSpeed. They already know that you're an IronSpeed expert, and it's all ready to go.
James, how about you? You've got a little bit of a different style to pitching your services.
The simple answer to Bill's question is yes, without a single doubt. It was quite a quantum leap we took to do effectively exactly what Bill is suggesting in refocusing our efforts rather than attempting to sort of be a generic provider, if you like, of web applications, but specifically to advertise our expertise and focus on IronSpeed specifically. And that, frankly, generated an awful lot more leads than any other method we've found. So, yeah, I couldn't stress that enough.
Ramesh asks, we have two applications. A, developed in MySQL. Can we bring it into IronSpeed Designer? B, developed in classic ASP. Can we bring it into IronSpeed Designer? This might be easy. Jim, what are your thoughts on that technical question?
Technically, no. It would be a completely separate application. .NET is a completely different technology than the other two that you mentioned. However, it may not take as much work as you think, because number one, IronSpeed might cover a lot of the code already written by hand in the other applications. And you might also be able to adjust the style so that you can make kind of an interim application, make an application that looks similar or the same as your existing applications, but handling just a few menu tabs of scope. and then add more and more to it during a transition process. But as far as opening up your classic application and somehow converting it to IronSpeed, no, that's not possible because it's a completely different technology.
Aesh, how would you approach that question? Two apps, one developed in MySQL, the other in classic ASP. How would you bring those into Designer?
Well, my approach would be if these are already in production application mode, what you can do is as new requirements come up, start basically spinning off an IronSpeed application. Since it's a regular .NET application, it can be started up from a link within their existing applications. So this way what you're doing is you're gradually introducing new functionality within IronSpeed and slowly migrating off. That's basically another approach in addition to what Jim mentioned.
Okay. Let me give you the 2-minute warning for questions here. I'm down to my last 2 questions, so if you have any other questions, please get those cards and letters in. Jacob asked, does any of the subscription get applied towards the perpetual? No, the subscription program, is not really a rent to own or anything like that. It's really designed for people who want to have a more extended evaluation and kind of do what you're contemplating, or perhaps for budgetary reasons don't want to make the investment of a perpetual license. They're just a lot more comfortable doing the month-to-month thing, which is why we offer both options. Tom asks, apologies, what was the name of the PM tool Jim mentioned again? So Jim?
And that was company Countersoft, and the name of the tool is Gemini.
Okay. Looks like we don't have any other questions coming in here. Nope. So I think we will call it a day. I want to thank you all for attending today, and I want to thank our 3 presenters, Jim Murphy at River City Software, James Whistler at Acid Yellow, and Aesh Gupta at Lightspeed Solutions for providing so much valuable information and kind of their unique take on how they're marketing themselves and using application generation. We have one more question coming in. I knew if I talked long enough, somebody would ask something, if only to get me to stop talking. Roberto asks, the only concern I have had with clients is that they will need IronSpeed forever to continue or edit UI pages, user interface pages, is not editable in Visual Studio. What do you think about it? James, what are your thoughts on that?
I would question why that's a concern, if I'm honest, Roberto, in that, firstly, if your client wanted to maintain their application outside of IronSpeed strictly through Visual Studio, IronSpeed's effectively generated you an ASP.NET application, and it would be hard work, but they could do that. But surely, if you've built them an application and they're happy with you and what you've built and your contractual engagement, to hang on to that client and build your customer base from them is surely exactly what you're looking for. So I would try and turn that around rather than see that as a negative.
Aesh, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Alan, my thoughts are if they do buy a perpetual license, then they do own that IronSpeed version forever. It's like some small customers of ours who basically said we are interested in building the solution. As I said, I always want to make sure the customer is feeling comfortable and they don't feel that we are kind of holding them hostage. So I always tend to buy them the perpetual license so that A, they feel more comfortable, and B, even 2 years down the road, if they have a need to make a small tweak, they have the tools. It's just like owning any other product. If you have purchased QuickBooks for accounting and you are only saving your data file, you cannot edit it down the road. So I don't see any reason why a company will not be willing to buy a perpetual license. That's my take.
Yep, that's a good point. We always encourage people that are doing consulting to include a copy of IronSpeed Designer with their bid. That way the client always has a way ultimately to modify that application should they need to down the road. I'll also point out that Designer generates standard .NET applications, so if they want they can always edit the application in Visual Studio. There's nothing weird or proprietary about it. It's a standard .NET application, so you can always throw away Designer if you want and just continue development and maintenance of that application in Visual Studio. Roberto has a follow-on question. Says, some contractors hire me to make the work for them. I guess maybe to do the work for them. Yeah, I think my 2 cents on that, Roberto, if I'm interpreting your question correctly, is you're really being hired to produce a result, not to work, just do work for the sake of work. It's all about the result you get and the speed in which you can deliver that result. In today's climate, I think if you spend 6 months building an app, the requirements for that app by the time the app is done 6 months later have already changed. So it really is about fast turnaround as much as it is anything else, doing work. Jim, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And I sometimes hire contractors to help us out with overflow, and at the same time, other companies hire us to be the contractor for them. But Alan, you're exactly right that what everyone wants is the results, not just to work. And IronSpeed kind of, I guess you could say, superpowers the results. So with less effort and strain on our part, we can produce more. So one person kind of turns into 5 people, that kind of a concept.
Ahmed asks, can we develop a web page with an employee as a single form and several grids like pays, I assume he means payments, deductions, not quite sure what that is, vacation, sick, etc. Oh, I assume he probably meant deduction. I think he's talking about a payroll application. A single form with an employee and several grids like pays, I assume that means payments, deductions, vacations, sick, etc. View only all on the same web page. James, can you do that?
Yeah. I'm sorry to keep answering these questions with one-word answers, but absolutely, yes. Within reason, you can make a single page as complex or as simple as you would like to. I'd suggest strongly that you have a look at some of the videos on the training pages on the IronSpeed website, Ahmed, and have a look and download some of those, work your way through them. As you may have seen from Jim's example, the application that he showed, you can build some extraordinarily complex pages in terms of the UI and the presentation layer. Yes, so without wishing to kind of over-egg it, yes, the answer totally, without doubt.
I have to confess, Aesh Gupta sometimes shows these screens, and I scratch my head and say, how did he do that in IronSpeed Designer? But ultimately, you can put just about anything on a page that you want. It's really a free-form canvas, so you can just drag and drop anything you want onto a page, and you can mix and match display with data editing, even within the same grid if you want. So from our perspective, a single employee with a number of other grids would be a simple master detail page or parent-child page where the employee is the master record and those other items, the list of payments, deductions, vacation taken, etc., is just a set of child tables. And the key to that, to go back to Jim's very first point, is to make sure you have the right database architecture, the right foreign key relationships between your employee table and those other data elements that you're looking to put on the page. If you have the right foreign key relationships, then Designer will do all of that for you. You won't have to lift a finger. Looks like those are all the questions we have. So once again, I will thank Jim Murphy of River City Software, James Whistler of Acid Yellow, and Aesh Gupta of Lightspeed Solutions. You've been great and very generous with your time and the secrets to your success. So thank you very much for sharing that all with us. I want to thank you all for attending this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are around the globe. And we wish you all the best of success with IronSpeed Designer. We look forward to seeing you back here very, very soon. Thank you and have a great day.